Hi, my name is Myra and I've been a natural dyer for the last 20 years because I love exploring the world of color. Before we did a video exploring avocado pits, and today we are going to explore the color from avocado peels. So I'm going to show you exactly what supplies you need for this dye. I will walk you through the process that I use and help potentially troubleshoot some dye problems. And I have a dye confession. So let's get started. So what do we need for this dye? Well, we need avocados. We need our fiber. I have cotton and wool, both pre-mordanted with alum, scale, measuring cup, dye pot, dye spoon, dye only because we don't mix our dye supplies with our kitchen supplies, washing soda, which is sodium carbonate, paint strips, toothbrush for cleaning our peels, which is what we're gonna do next. Okay, let's prep these peels. So when I'm doing this dye, I like to do a 2-to-1 ratio. So that means that if I'm going to dye 100 grams of fiber, I'm gonna need 200 grams of avocado peels. You can use less, but the color might not be as saturated, so it really is a personal choice. Now my goal with the peels is I want to get as much of the flesh off as possible. And I used to be lazy about this step. And I thought it was like fine if there was a little bit of gunk on there. But as soon as I really concentrated on making sure they were very clean, I did notice that my dye color improved. So back in the day, I would have said, it's good enough. It's not good enough. So I'm scraping out as much as I can with the spoon to help me for this next step, and that is to wash them. But I'm not only going to wash them. Actually, let me get them all in this water so they can start to soak. I take this a little step further and I scrub them. I swear this extra step has made a difference, and I'm sure other dyers have gotten really great color without doing this, but this is my new process and I'm sticking to it. You can see when I say scrub, I mean, I'm really I'm scrubbing. I'm getting in there to get all that flesh off there because I just don't want anything to get in the middle of my dye attaching to the fiber. And you can tell by the color of the water, which is getting funky, that it does affect the color. I mean, honestly, I don't know if it affects the color. I've decided it affects the color. Okay. Once it looks like all the little bits are off and you just can't do any more, call it good. Gotta get in there, get it out. Okay, see, look, you don't want that in your dye, that's disgusting. Okay, next step, dice. I want these peels to be as small as possible because I want the dye properties that are contained within the peel to have an easy time getting into the dye pot. And there are 3 dye chemical compounds that are within the avocado that gives us this really great pink color. Those are the flavonoids, which make the yellow dye. Then there's also some anthraquinoids, which give us red, and that one's got gunk on it still. And there are some tannins in this avocado. And the tannin is really great for helping with color fastness. There's not a lot of tannin. So there are some dyes that, like walnuts, that are full of so much tannin that mordant is not necessary. I don't think there's enough tannin to mean that you don't need a mordant, so that is why I still mordant with alum. Plus, alum is just really great for brightening the color, and since I want a pink, I want it to be as bright a pink as possible. Man, I almost think it'd be easier to tear these instead of cutting them. This is why people just throw them in without cutting. Okay. Now that they are diced, we are turning on our scale and we are going to weigh them. So this is actually kind of perfect because I have 25 grams of fiber and I have exactly 50 grams of avocado skins, and that doesn't often happen. If it's, you know, a little extra, it's a little less, it's fine. It's not an exact science, at least not when I do it. So all I have to do is take these peels and add them into my pot of hot water. I'm going to just let these cook, simmer at a low heat for about half an hour, about an hour. At this point, time isn't really a determining factor. I like to look at it more as color. The only thing that is really important is you do not want to let this boil, because if this dye boils, the dye is going to turn brown. So I'm going to closely monitor this. Make sure it doesn't come to a boil for about an hour, check the color, and then turn it off. And when I say check the color, this is when my super handy measuring cup comes in, which is a big upgrade from in the past when I just used my dye spoon. Because you'll notice soon, within maybe 10-15 minutes, this dye is going to start to turn orange. And once it becomes a darker orange, that is when I know that it's pretty good for today, and I'm gonna turn it off, and then I'm gonna let it sit. So it's gonna sit for at least a day. It can be 2 days, 3 days, whenever you get to it, it's fine. And then we're gonna come back and we are going to finish our dye. So it's been 30 minutes and I'm going to check the dye color. Now, I'm gonna use my super handy dandy measuring cup instead of my dye spoon, because this is so much easier when you're trying to see what the color is, especially in situations like this. So it's such a pretty orange color, but I want it to be darker. So I'm gonna let this keep going for probably another half an hour to an hour. Then I'm gonna turn it off and I'm gonna let it sit overnight so it can really deepen that dye color. If you step away and it does boil, you can always come back, scoop up your dye, and if it's still orange, you're good to go. If it is brown, you can try it and see what happens, or just dump it and start over. So I'm gonna keep this going and then I will see you in a day or two. Hello again. It has been 2 days since we started this dye, so let's check that dye color. So you'll be able to see the difference of what it was when we first started out versus a couple days later. So you can really see the difference of waiting for the time for all those dye components to do our thing. So at this point, it is ready to go. I have it nice and warm, and the only thing I need to do before I add my fiber is to make this dye alkaline. It is important to make it alkaline if you want to pull out those pinker tones. So I'm going to use my pH strips because I want to test it before I add anything, because I've noticed that even without adding my modifier, the peels are alkaline. So you can see on my little pH strip, this is about a 7. I want it to be closer to an 8-9. So I'm going to add my washing soda, otherwise known as soda ash or sodium carbonate. You can buy this in the cleaning section of a grocery store or, of course, online. So I only need a smidge because it's already at a 7. So I'm just gonna add a little bit. Stir thoroughly. Make sure all of the powder gets completely dissolved into the dye because we do not want the little powder bits to attach to the fiber. And now I will test again. You just pull off your little strip, dip your strip into your dye. Oh yeah, that's way better. So now it's much closer to an 8. I think that's good. It's almost a 9. Anyway, whatever it is, it's perfect. At this point, we're gonna add our fiber. So let me get this out of the way. And I have my wool and my cotton sample sitting in this bath of warm water. It's important for it to be fully saturated and in the same temperature as your dye bath. That will just help the dye end up being more even. So let's start off with the wool. And then we're gonna add the cotton. I'm going to just let it sit in this dye at a very low heat, but I'm only gonna keep it in here for about a half an hour because the longer you keep the wool fiber in a highly alkaline dye bath, the higher likelihood that it's going to roughen the wool. It's gonna sit in here for about a half an hour, and then I'm gonna let it cool in the dye bath and then pull it out in a little bit later. So while this is marinating for the next 30 minutes, let's troubleshoot some problems in case you do this dye and it didn't work. It may have boiled, and if it boils, it is going to go brown. So again, make sure you keep the avocado peels at a low heat. The other problem could be that it wasn't alkaline enough. Being alkaline is really important to pull out the pink tones of this dye. The third option could be your peels weren't clean enough. I swear, scrubbing the peels really does help pull out that bright pink color. And lastly, it's important to remember we're doing natural dyes and we're dyeing with things from nature. All sorts of elements can affect what we're dyeing with. So the environment it is grown in, like the conditions of the soil, when it was picked, things we haven't even thought about, they can all affect our dye. And so sometimes you'll do the same process and you'll get 2 different shades of color. So remember, this is just really all an experiment. And that's also why it is important to take notes. They will help you in the future. So speaking of experiments, this is when I need to make a little dye confession. So the first time I tried this dye was many years ago, way before social media, back when natural dyeing was on like 3 blogs. And on one of these blogs, it said, to dye with avocados, it's important to make the pits alkaline to get the pink, and then to make the peels acidic to get orange. So that's what I did. And I got a beautiful pink and I got a beautiful orange, and then I didn't dye with peels again. And over time, I kept seeing other dyers getting pink from peels or saying that you could get pink from peels. And I was like, no, that's not possible, because the one time I dyed with peels, I got an orange. But let me try it and see if maybe you know what you're talking about. And so I did try. I tried to make it alkaline. It didn't work, and I was like, okay, I'm right. But then more and more people were saying, no, really, you can get pink from using the peels. And so I tried it again, and it worked. I got a beautiful pink. So this is the lesson. First of all, do not just do it one time and think because you did it that one time, it's either gonna work that way every time, or it's never gonna work that way every time. And also remember, there's not one way to do things. So that's my confession. So let's check this color. Oh, it's so beautiful. This is just ridiculous. Okay, this is spectacular. So I'm trying not to be excited, but I can't help it. Okay, so I'm going to let this cool in the dye bath, just to give it a little bit extra time to absorb the dye, since I'm not cooking it at a heat for a long period of time. Oh my God, look at the cotton. Now, it's so important to remember with cotton that it will dry a lot lighter than how it appears when it's wet. So keep that in mind. Okay, so I'm gonna let this sit. It's gonna cool. I'm gonna pull it, I'm gonna rinse it, and then we're done. I hope this video helped you today and any day until we dye again. If you've enjoyed this video, come on over to my Patreon account where you can watch an extended version ad-free, along with other cool natural dye content. And it's a place to share your own natural dye projects. I would love to see what you are creating. So I'll see you there.